LinkedIn and posting content has been the singular most important thing to grow the business, because without that we wouldn't have landed some of these clients initially. Again, I've been agency side like pre-Verde for like 10 plus years, and I've seen senior hires that are good talkers and good thinkers, but that is a complete difference to a good doer. Even if AI search is really exciting, it comes down to money. And like we know that we can kind of generate 7-8 figure revenue growth year on year for our clients, and that's what we're really pushing. This is part of the problem with like the industry at the moment, is that there is a feeling that some people have cracked the code, when I just truly don't believe that is the case. And I think people are selling it as if they cracked the code.
Joe Hale, thank you so much for joining me on the Agency Growth Club.
Great to be here. Honestly, thank you so much, Josh. I know we've spoken before, but good to actually be on here and hopefully chat a little bit more.
Absolutely. So let's dive straight into it. So Verde, you've been building for, I think it's just under 3 years. How did you land your first paying client?
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Verde's been going for just under 3 years now. When I set it up, we didn't have a client. I didn't kind of have this like side project that I was working on that then kind of took over. I kind of went into it fresh. How I landed my first paying client was I was signing up to like various different freelancer websites. I had a very clear vision of like who we want to work with, and that was around like fashion, e-commerce, luxury. Um, but I was basically just signing myself up to different freelancer websites, because at the time it was more like consultancy freelancer rather than like an actual agency. Um, and I was just a bit like obsessive about trying to find people through there, but finding the right people. So I wasn't just applying for anything that come up around fashion. I was like on it, and that's actually how I got my first one. So it was just another day of trying to set up a freelance slash agency business. And I was just onto this post straight away, contacted them. And I think literally that day or the day after, I was like, here's our budget. Can you do it? Really small budget. I was like, yeah, let's do it. And went on to do it. And actually, that was our first ever award win as well for the work that we did with them.
Awesome. I love that. I had Ashley Little from Deviation on recently, and he gave me the whole story about how he did free work for, I think it was Represent, and then he went on to get, I think he said Gymshark, Pure Gym, which are like two big brands, and it was all about doing like the free work for basically nothing to be able to get case studies to bring in the rest. So I wanted to go on that, right? So you said that you picked the niche, fashion and luxury, right? Bring us through that. How did you pick that niche, and why did you pick that niche?
Yeah. So we kind of deal with like mostly like fashion, luxury, sportswear, e-com, that sort of space. Fashion, we kind of really lean into heavily. And I think it was like a mixture of a few things. It was like, what is my background? So like my previous background, I've worked with like a ton of fashion brands before. So from like Urban Outfitters to Net-a-Porter to Mr. Porter to Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein. I had that experience anyway from previous agencies. But actually, it was like, what am I interested in personally? And I was like, if I'm going to build this like life for myself and this career and this agency, do I want to do something which I find is really interesting or really cool? And that's exactly what I did. So it was a case of like, well, look, we want to start bringing sportswear in, because I'm big into my sports, and that's how we landed things like Pure Sport. But it was just like, what's my experience plus what do I actually care about? Merge the two, and I was like, that's what we're going to go for. I From the start, I really did want to niche down. I was like, if I'm taking this different path to what I'm doing, let's make it as fun as possible, and that's kind of why I took that choice.
Awesome. I really love that. And okay, so you mentioned Pure Sport, big hydration company in the UK. You mentioned, I think you work with Paul Smith as well, right? So like some
Yeah.
big brands. So first of all, how do you then capitalize on having those big brands to bring in other bigger brands now that you've got those logos under your name?
Yeah. So yeah, we've got a few brands that have really kind of helped with that. Pure Sport, Adenola, Couture Club, Jaded London, like loads of great names. I think what I've tried to do is just really kind of like shout about it on LinkedIn. Like that's been like the kind of main point of reference. And we've got brands that I want to shout about because I'm a fan of the brand anyway, and that's what's cool. So just like if anyone's going to shout about it, it has to come from us. It has to come from me personally. So that's kind of like where I've started it, and that has kind of had like a bit of a domino effect because it's great if you can shout about the brands you're working with, and that sparks interest in other people. Be like, oh, I've heard you've worked with so and so. But then when you start to develop like some of these like incredible results that we have, that's when like, oh wait, not only are we interested, we've maybe seen this case study or they've booked a discovery call and I can take them through the case study. That's been that next level because a conversation I was having with a client recently is that we work with some of the coolest brands in the world. I truly believe that. But when you work with the coolest brands, everyone wants to work with the coolest brands, which means they are constantly getting messages from other agencies, other freelancers saying like, "Can we work with you? We can do this. Here's what they're doing wrong." Um, so that means that you have to be kind of like on top of your game. And it means you have to deliver really great results. You can't just kind of like let it sit because if you let it sit, someone else won't. So yeah, it's just been about developing their kind of like organic search strategy to really generate revenue. And on top of everything else they're doing, so they're like, right, we only want to work with Verde because they are the guys.
I love that. I've got one of my really good friends, Andrew Peloso. He owns like 3 agencies over in Austin. But he told me one time when because we were talking about this similar kind of question, but once you've got like a big client, like how do you maximize on that? And one thing he talked about, which I thought was so interesting, and I don't know if you guys are doing it, but like we did it for years, was when we did a case study, we would like go into like their pain of like where they were before they started working with us, right? And like go through all of this and then show because of us where their results are, which is like, when I told Andrew about this, he was like, it's a complete wrong way to do it. So he had just hired a video production team to fly around the US to get his best clients, right? Because he's got like some of the big names, and to do a video testimonial with them. And the whole thing was that it was from inspiration from Nike. So Nike never talks about like what their shoe or anything does. They just get these like massive names that you're like, oh, they're the best of the best, and they use Nike. So that was his whole like thesis behind it, is he went, did the video testimonials, and it was like, don't talk about us, just talk about where you are, talk about where your growth goals are in the next like 3 years. And then automatically either their competitors or like people in the similar ICP band are going to look at that and be like, oh, these people are like exactly where we want to be or where we are. And they chose Verde to work with. We like want to be similar to that, which I thought was like, to me, was such a light flick switch moment or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I've actually seen another agency do that recently. So and maybe it might be from off the back of a conversation like this, and I've not thought about it like that, but that's such a clever way to look at it. And I think you're right. Like for us, we're having to constantly self-promote. So if we can get someone to do that talking for us, then what a way to go about it.
Yeah. And also, right, going to put you on a hot seat question here, right? So I'm sure you've got like a dream 100 client list or dream 10. If you can think about that brand in your head right now, who's like somebody you really want to work with, right?
Yeah.
How would you then go about signing them as a client now? Because you said you're in a super competitive space, because you're trying to work with the best guys. Everybody's hounding them on outreach and trying to show up differently. How would you show up differently to try and get them?
Honestly, it's probably something that we need to work on. Like, how do we show up in those spaces because they're so competitive? The ones we've already won a few of our clients from our dream client list. And actually, it's not the fancy outreach, it's not the gifts, it's nothing like that, which don't get me wrong, I think definitely can put you in the right place or at least get your name out there. Ultimately, it's really come down to results and actually caring about what you're doing. So like when we talk to prospective clients and I suppose it's hard to get that initial conversation, but when we're showcasing our results on something like LinkedIn, that's what's driving some of our dream clients to then message us. You like I've been surprised at how many of these big brands are reaching out to us and not the other way around. We haven't done any outreach for this year. Definitely, we've done no outreach, and we're still kind of having those conversations. I think the way that we stand out really is that passion. So like it's not just about passion for like SEO, right? it's a passion for the industry that they're in. It's an understanding of not just like where that brand is, but actually like we can talk to most fashion brands, go, oh, XYZ competitor are already doing this and that, because even if it's nothing to do with SEO, we just know because we're interested in fashion. And I think that's what's helped set us apart. And actually, it's nothing fancy. It's just we actually care and we're actually interested. And that for me has been the thing that whenever we have a conversation, seems to set us apart from every kind of other agency that people might be talking to.
Perfect. And okay, so you basically, in a nutshell, create an inbound funnel, right? And I'd say a lot of that comes through your personal brand. I love seeing your posts on LinkedIn. I love that you do the monthly roundups every month, and I genuinely love reading through them. So again, I feel like we're kind of past the stage of like trying to give people advice on how to build personal brands and like post on LinkedIn. But again, what's been working for you on LinkedIn? I think you're posting more on TikTok and Instagram now as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, as of only recently, I'm trying to re-push video content. So with video content, it's definitely something I'm a bit more apprehensive about. I know the value of it. It's just I've always found an excuse not to do it. There's always like, "Oh, it takes too long to edit, or I don't have time to film, or I don't have the right lighting, or this or that." So I'm trying to just put stuff out there, even if it's not perfect or not polished. I'm trying to just kind of put my face back out there. And I think part of the reason is definitely seeing like a decline in terms of LinkedIn, in terms of that reach. Strangely, like we're still having really good conversations from people that have never even engaged with my posts before, but they're like, oh, I've seen your LinkedIn everywhere. It's like I want to have this conversation, which is quite cool. I think the main thing from like a personal branding standpoint is trying to, or what I think has worked for me is trying to blend who I am with what I do. So I do SEO, but I'm more than just someone that does SEO. I'm a dad. I love football. I run a marathon. I've done all these things, right? And I think that there's ways that, like it sounds so silly, but there's ways that humans connect with each other. It's finding those common interests. And I think that we know that we're really good at what we do, but actually by showcasing more of myself, that's what kind of initiates that initial conversation of like, oh, I didn't realize you support so and so, or you ran the marathon, or something like that. So for me, it's just trying to be myself. It's not just trying to be the SEO person. It's trying to be Joe Hale, and I'm a multifaceted human. This is everything that I do.
Yeah, I love that. I can resonate with that. I went to San Diego to Brighton SEO in September, and I had more and more people come up to me talking about where I've been traveling, right? From like where I've put up on LinkedIn, than anything that I've said about hiring or salary, like anything, right? And I feel like if you've got the personal level of things, the second level of like what you're known for, whatever the business you've got or the industry, kind of comes as a second nature thing. But people don't remember that bit. They remember literally what you just said, which again, it feels uncomfortable posting it because you're like, what value has this got? Like I've just either moved into a new apartment or I'm going whatever. Like you're always trying to like force some kind of lesson in there if you're posting it on LinkedIn. But yeah, it's literally how people remember you.
I think what helps is, and I've had a few people say this to me before, they feel like they know me before we even start working together. And I think that helps because it's like, all right, we already have this like common interest, or even like things like they know how I sound and how I look, and like there's that familiarity with it, right? And I think that that's been the kind of thing that helps make you stand out. It's like there's that thing of like, right, I already sort of know Joe, then that's what works well. And I think that's why as well you're seeing like everyone kind of talk about like employee generated content, and why that actually works well for businesses is because then they're not just dealing with the founder, they're dealing with the employees, they get to know them, they want to work with people that they think are familiar or similar to them. So like you said, it's uncomfortable, like the whole video stuff. I definitely haven't kind of found like my rhythm with it, but I'm just trying to just do it because it's something that I really want to do. I just need to stop putting it off.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I had Jonathan, who owns Client Boost, on the podcast a few months ago. So they've scaled to like 20 million plus a year. And he has got, it's monetized KPIs for his team to like post on LinkedIn. And they've got like set targets that they have to reach and how they measure them. and it's like people could get like $1,000 bonus for this month for doing this. You don't have to participate as well. Like it's just like a fun type of thing. And then Jules Davies, who runs Scalers, he's the exact same. He's grown crazily. I think he's done 2 million ARR in 2 years. I had him on the podcast like a month or two ago as well. And again, he's going all in on like hiring people just to focus on LinkedIn content. He's got somebody doing like his carousels, like everything he's got. And it's like, he's getting so much, again, inbound funnel from that it's like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. So my kind of introduction into that, and it's definitely something I want to bring into Verde, is I was at a previous agency that was led by a guy called Chris Donnelly, who's like everywhere on LinkedIn, like 1 million plus followers on LinkedIn, all over TikTok. He now runs Searchable. But at this agency, there was quarterly goals, which again, you didn't have to participate. If you posted X on LinkedIn and you had the most posts or kind of engagement or whatever it was, there was financial rewards to it. So in my head at the time, I was like, well, this is just easy, right? This is just easy money. What I didn't realize at the time so much was like, not only is it easy money for me, it's then easy money for the business. But then actually, as I set up my own business, it's all that from like years ago, which is kind of like carried on through with me and really like enabled me to grow Verde. I think LinkedIn and posting content has been the singular most important thing to grow the business, because without that, we wouldn't have landed some of these clients initially because no one heard of us. And actually, like one of the things I remember thinking at the time was like, the world does not need another agency doing SEO. But like, what is it that we do differently? And I think that's definitely one of the things that made us stand out.
I love that. Yeah, big fan of Chris's content. I'll tell you something after the podcast, quite interesting.
Cool.
But okay, cool. Let's bring us back to the early days of Verde. So I doubt it was smooth sailing. Like you guys have gone through insane growth and everything. I doubt you've gone smooth sailing the whole way through here. So let's talk cash flow. Cash flow, early days, you know, how did you kind of build that up? Did you keep a nest egg? What was the strategy behind that?
Yeah, I mean, from a cash flow perspective, so as a person, like I've always kind of saved throughout my life. So I knew that I could take this risk and sort of jump at it. So I was still like consulting at like other agencies and stuff at the time and like another brand. So there was never like a real issue. It's just more kind of keeping on top of like ensuring payment. And there was a time where I was earning less than I ever had, like not ever had, but like maybe in like 5-10 years, like somewhere along that line. But it's a case of like, well, actually, if I can build this pot up slowly, then that's going to be the thing that enables me to be like, if we can reach X, then that pays for someone's salary. So it was, to be honest, just a case of like just being on top of it. And like we grew quite slowly at the beginning. It was quite gradual, an extra grand and a half here and there each month that kind of enabled us to get to like a position where I was earning what I was earning previously. But that in itself probably took 6-7 months to get to, if not longer. So yeah, there was no real kind of like cash flow issues. It's just a case of like taking that leap and kind of living a bit more frugally for a little bit, just being like, right, how can we build this up? And at the time, it was more like a consultancy and a freelance thing, but I knew what I wanted to build it into. I was like, well, let's just kind of take the hit now. I saw a video the other day that George Heaton from Represent did about kind of like delayed gratification and paying yourself less and stuff like that, and not to the same level as what he had done, but I think as a business owner, you do that and go, well, what's the bigger picture? What do I actually want to achieve in 5 years? And I only went full time on the business in February 2024, so we're like just over 2 years now. But you can see that growth and be like, right, I understand why I've done that now, because we're starting to build the foundations for the next 2, 5, 10 years.
Yeah, I had a different story. It took us like a while to like start generating like decent amount of cash flow coming in, and we got too excited when it came in. We spent 44 grand on a mentorship program that we shouldn't have spent on. We spent about 28 grand on an event that we could have done for like 5 grand. And then the whole thing of, especially the event, myself and the team were like all focused on like throwing an event, like trying to make it as big and as spectacular as we could, that like the business focus like took a hit. And then we had a client that was one of our biggest fees at the time, was like 28 grand. And they withheld it for like 3 months because they were a US company. I had to fill in like all these disgusting forms. And yeah, I still feel that feeling today of like cash flow needs to be like at a healthy amount. So we always keep 1 year runway in the bank. So many people tell me like finance, whatever, like, oh, your capital's better allocated here or whatever. I don't care. Like it keeps me happy, and I'm happy that it's there. But yeah, I love that. So you mentioned growing slowly for a while, and then yeah, I feel like you guys, I mean, you mentioned, I won't say the number before you came on the call, but you said you guys have done very, very well from last year to this year. What kind of changed? What hit that momentum?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't mind mentioning it, but I was actually looking at like our kind of revenue figures the other day, and like our revenue this April compared to last April is like between 4 and 5 times higher than what it was last year. I think there's been like a few things that have enabled that. One has been, well, one's been having a daughter, so like I've got a 1 year old now, which strangely makes things harder, but then it gives you that extra drive. I'm not saying grow a business and have a baby and that's the answer, but there's definitely something in that that's helped the business grow, even without so much sleep. But I think there's been a few things on top of that. I think one is the clients that we originally started working with, low budgets, we kind of took on work and over-serviced, but that has allowed us to develop case studies and a name for ourselves, and people have seen what we can do. So that has been like really key of being like, right, we know that we're being underpaid for this, but there's actually so much more that we can do with this, and taking that hit initially to then grow. Hiring senior has been massive for us. So I assume we'll probably talk a bit more about hiring, but there was a point where I was like, do we take the hit and go, let's hire someone more senior, which then adds more kind of like troubles to your plate. It's like, right, we then need more money coming in and stuff like that. But that really has enabled the business to grow, because we're now in a position where we've got a team of like really trustworthy people that know what they're doing. And without kind of taking that leap originally, I feel like it would have 100% delayed the growth. But also that, like, even if we did sign these clients, the actual work wouldn't have been to the same standard without these great people that we've got in the team, and therefore they would have just left anyway. So I think they're the sort of like main things which has enabled us the growth, but just also like just I suppose it's that relentlessness of like not a relentlessness in terms of scaling at all costs and like everyone has to work every hour under the sun, because that's not how we operate the business. But we're constantly wanting to push like, why can't we talk to this sort of brand? Why can't we do really great work for them? Why can't we be in those conversations? If it means that like this year, it's a bit like, I don't know if it's cool to talk about like working every hour under the sun, but that's the truth. Like I have had to work every hour under the sun, and like I don't want my team to. But that relentlessness of like, let's just do a really good job. Like as soon as the money comes in, that's not end goal. It's like, let's do a really good job for them, retain them, and that's how we're then going to win the next wave of clients the following year.
I love that. To have the same conversations with my team. It's like I happily work the weekends because I actually love doing it, but don't expect any of the team to do any of that. Like, please sign off at 5 or whatever it is. Like, go live your life. So you mentioned there hiring junior versus senior, right? And I think we talked about it before we hit record. That I think you did a LinkedIn post about this last year, and we commented, had a conversation about it. And it's so interesting because I get that there's pros to both sides, and I get there's cons to both sides. And I genuinely think it comes down to like who the agency or who the company is. If you've got the whole capability and time freedom to bring in a junior, and you're like, first of all, you need to know that you're going to spend a lot of time one-on-one. They're going to make a lot of mistakes. It's going to take, I don't know, 6 months to a year until you're fully happy with like, right, these guys are we can do the 80-20 relegation rule or delegation rule, like that sort of thing. But then on the senior side, you're taking a big hit in terms of finances, especially if it's like one of your first hires. And yeah, so I think it's super, super interesting. So you then went and hired senior, right? So you obviously, you did that, you hired on the junior side and then you hired on the senior side. Just from that, like what differences have you kind of seen? Like not in specifics of like who the person was, but just like in terms of characteristics, anything like that.
Yeah. So you mentioned like the kind of like main reason why you might hire junior over senior comes down to cost, right? I think that what hiring senior allowed us to do, or allowed me to do, was free up my time to actually work on the business. It freed up my time to help deliver a really good service across our clients as well. Because when you're hiring junior, like you said, you almost have to like double up work. You're having to train someone, and you need to you need to dedicate that time to them. Which, when you are running a business that's growing quite rapidly, you don't actually have that time. So hiring seniors allowed me that freedom of time. It's allowed me that kind of like space as well to, if we get an email, it's not everything's on my shoulders. My team are more than well equipped to be able to deal with things that then I don't need to oversee every single conversation. I'm still heavily involved in all of our clients, and I want to be involved with everything, but not every email now requires me to be a part of. It could be something that a quick 10-minute email conversation between someone in my team and someone on the client side gets sorted, we get it live, rather than kind of waiting 48 hours for me to kind of get around to it because I've got a backlog of all these other things. So for me, hiring senior has just freed up my time so much, and allowed me to work on what's going to help us go to the next level, or what's going to help our client go to the next level and work on strategy, rather than being so in the weeds of the doing.
Yeah. And this is what I mean. It depends on the agency, because like we've a client of ours, Studio Hawk, like they've got, I think it's called the Hawk Academy, where they like genuinely train up. I think it's people coming out of university. They train them up on like their own SEO ways, like all this, and then give them a job by the end of it. So if you've got the resources and you've got the time and the dedication to that, like probably works out better than the most hires, because you can kind of train them to like the way that you guys work as well. But then on the other side, you got the hiring seniors, which again, a lot of times when I jump on discovery calls with companies, they're like, okay, senior means extra talent, extra whatever. And again, it comes down to the importance of how good your vetting process is, because you can have somebody that's been in SEO 15 years, right? But like you put them up against your vetting process, or like you'd be so surprised that there's people out there working at like tick box agencies that have kind of like drifted through their whole career, but like when they get put on the hot seat, completely freeze. So that's one thing that we do on our vetting process. And again, back into kind of what we chatted about there about culture, was 60% of our vetting process is weighted on behavioral fit engine. So things like value articulation, ownership and reliability, which you just mentioned, client communication, actually like commercial understanding. And then the 40% is like tech and domain, so the actual like specifics on it. And again, the whole idea is like, doesn't matter what book you read on hiring, or like Steve Jobs talking about hiring, it all goes back to skill you can teach. Culture and soft skills are like, sorry, the other way around. No, I was right. Skills you can teach. The actual behavior is like pretty hard to teach somebody.
Yeah.
Which again, yeah.
Yeah, and this thing, like, so again, I've been agency side, like pre-Verde, for like 10 plus years. And I've seen senior hires that are good talkers and good thinkers, but that is a complete difference to a good doer. And when you're growing a business, you need people to be able to do the work, because ultimately it's the people that are doing it that are then going to generate results for our clients. That's then going to make them revenue, which is then going to make them carry on with us. And I think that's sometimes a hard thing to kind of find, because you can talk a great game and talk about how much you know about SEO or whatever it is, but ultimately it's like, can you actually do the doing? Are you a strategizer, or can you get your hands dirty, get it done? And I think I've been so lucky in the senior hires that I have made. they understand the bigger picture, but they're like, right, let's go, get it done. And that's been massively helpful to us. It's why our clients are kind of seeing great results.
Awesome. And so, okay, we mentioned doing SEO, right? So SEO is changing, I feel like, every single week at the minute through this whole AI stuff. First of all, are your clients noticing it, and is it coming up in conversation with you guys?
Yeah. So it's becoming a lot more common in the kind of like monthly calls and stuff like that. Talks around AI and kind of like how we can monitor it and what the next steps are and how do we be part of that conversation. That's something that's like kind of very prevalent at the moment.
Yeah. And because again, you can go onto LinkedIn and you can see, you can panic straight away. And I always think the most important thing to do is just like listen to the actual clients, what they're talking about, and try and give advice on that. And from that, are you guys changing packages, pricing, anything?
It's a bit of a yes and no question, because I think that with AI search, I think if you completely disregard it, the problem is it kind of feels like you're almost falling behind the times. But what we're seeing is like some of our clients are making like millions upon millions extra year on year through organic search. So we know that the revenue is there for us to take, and that's why we kind of really heavily weight our work towards that. The way that I see AI search is a bit more of like a sandbox where you can play with things and start to like identify how can we be part of that conversation. And it's fun and exciting, but I think the main thing that we're seeing is that it's coming from our clients above them. So like people from above them are saying like, why are we not appearing in XYZ search? They need to then kind of justify that. We need to kind of have like a bit of a plan of action towards that. And there's a lot of what we do from an SEO perspective, which is helping impact that. But the revenue figures that we're seeing are far smaller. And the thing with AI search as well is like currently it's a lot harder to track. You can't really see any kind of like data behind the prompts. So you can kind of, it's a lot of like guesswork. And I think it's fun because you can try things, but even though SEO isn't black and white in terms of like, if you do this, it's going to generate Y, there's a bit more data to it. There's a bit more kind of understanding. With AI search, I think as long as you kind of go into it, being honest with your clients, be like, look, it's this whole new thing. Like, no one's got it figured out. I think there's a lot of people that say they have it figured out. I truly don't believe that. It's something that everyone's like learning and seeing like, how can we be part of that conversation? I think it's just like trying to kind of like add that onto what we're already doing, because we saw one client recently, we're tracking their kind of like AI search visibility across like 3 different platforms. They're seeing like really strong growth versus competitors. We are essentially just rolling out what was our SEO strategy anyway, and we can see that it's impacting them. So like we're really working on like building out all their collection pages and the content around that. We're seeing that now play its part in kind of like improving AI visibility. That in itself is still like it's guesswork. So like some of these tools, I think they're really interesting, but you do kind of have to take these numbers with a pinch of salt, because there's no way they know every single prompt. Like it's sort of guesswork. But yeah, definitely kind of like changing the way we work to a degree, but it's more on like a reporting and like what's new, how can we influence this? Because we still really believe in the kind of bulk of work that we're doing from SEO, and we know that that's what's driving revenue. And ultimately, even if AI search is really exciting, it comes down to money. And like we know that we can kind of generate 7, 8 figure revenue growth year on year for our clients, and that's what we're really pushing.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that it normally comes above somebody there, the stakeholders. I watched a great podcast with Eli Schwartz and Ross Hudgens recently. And Eli was talking about the exact same thing, is that it's normally coming from like somebody super, super high up that's watched some video about, okay, we're not getting found in AI search, Google's dead. Like, where's the SEO team? The SEO team that like they didn't really care about, because it was always that kind of silo team that was off to the side, didn't get the importance that it should. They're getting brought to the table, right? Where are we in AI search? And then they try and like backlog it on, well, we're down on impressions and clicks in Google Search Console because of everything that's going on, and it looks really bad on the SEO team. And then they don't know how to communicate because they've never been asked to communicate the proper way. It was such a great piece, and it was like, it's just interesting because it's literally what you just said. It's like the Wild West out there. Nobody fully understands how to crack the code, and everybody's just trying to get on with it.
Yeah, and I think this is part of the problem with like the industry at the moment, is that there is a feeling that some people have cracked the code when I just truly don't believe that is the case. And I think people are selling it as if they cracked the code, rather than just being like honest about it and be like, look, it's this ever evolving thing. And like, look, if we all search the same thing on 3 different platforms all at the same different time, you're going to get different results to what I'm getting. And there's so much to it that I think it's about being transparent with clients and like letting them know that these are the kind of like drawbacks. But I think with the industry as well, it's the kind of, I feel like everyone's looking at AI search or SEO as just like one singular thing, as if like all search queries are the exact same. I keep seeing data on like X amount of search queries get 0 clicks. Now, this isn't like a new concept. This isn't a new thing that people Google something and don't click, because every search is different. If I'm looking for neon running socks, right, I want to go and explore the different colors, the different brands, and that's where I'll search that, but then click different links, try to find a brand that I can build an affinity with. Like, oh, I think this is really cool. Like, I really want to buy from this brand because I like their ethos. That's such a different search query to like, what's the time in Lisbon? That doesn't need a click, right? That's just Google telling you something. And I think this is where we're kind of like mixing things up a little bit and almost painting the whole industry with like one brush in terms of like, oh, but clicks going down. So it really depends on like what type of content's being created and what is the intent behind the search demand. So yeah, that's kind of like what we're trying to then like relay back to our clients as well. Is like some of the work that we're doing, we're seeing like huge click increases year on year. So I know everyone's saying clicks down. We're not necessarily seeing that. We're seeing that people that have gone really heavy into like blog content that maybe is unrelated to like what they do, they're seeing massive drops year on year. But the work that we're doing is seeing like really great clicks uplift, even with the kind of like change in way people search and like SERPs evolving and stuff like that.
I love it. Joe, I feel like we could do a whole nother podcast just on that topic. I could go forever with you on that.
Yeah.
But I'm wary of the time. For anybody watching, Joe, where can they find you?
So they can find me on LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn is just /JHale. If you search Joe Hale, you'll find me. You can find us on Instagram, verde.digital. My TikTok, I think, is @JoeVerde. It's not that impressive, but I'm trying to build it up. So if you're there, please give something a like. But yeah, that's kind of like where I'm living at the moment.
Thanks for sticking around to the end, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're an agency owner that is wanting to scale and wants to continue bringing your business to new heights and doesn't want to put everything on pause for hiring and finding the best talent that's out there in SEO and paid media, well, that's something I can help with. I own a recruitment company that has specialized in both the SEO and paid media sector, and we work with 100+ businesses. So I'm going to leave 2 links below. There's no big pitch here, but if you want to talk over strategy and hiring and how myself and my team can find you the best A-player talent in both the SEO and paid media sector, then please book in, and I look forward to talking to you. Thank you.